I stood in front of my parents' colonial-style house in suburban Boston, the December wind biting through my cashmere coat. Snow crunched beneath my Louboutins, shoes I'd never let my family know cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. Taking a deep breath of the crisp New England air, I reminded myself, just get through the next 6 hours, Olivia. You've survived worse. The familiar weight settled in my stomach, that mixture of dread and resignation that accompanied every family gathering. At 32, I was still little Liv to them, perpetually underestimated and overlooked. I adjusted the designer bags hanging from my arms, filled with gifts that would be received with polite indifference, and pressed the doorbell. "There she is! The secretary has arrived." My brother Mike's booming voice greeted me before the door had fully opened. He stood there in his Harvard Medical School sweatshirt, bourbon in hand, grinning like he'd made the cleverest joke in the world. "Executive assistant," I corrected automatically, forcing a smile as I stepped inside. The warm air carried the scent of my mother's roast and cinnamon, a comforting contrast to the emotional chill that awaited me. "Same difference," he shrugged, taking one of my bags. "Mom's been asking when you'd get here. Apparently, Aunt Carol's been bragging about Melissa's promotion at her law firm again." Perfect. Just perfect. The living room was a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. The massive Christmas tree twinkling in the corner, garlands draped across the fireplace, and my entire extended family scattered across sofas and chairs. My father held court by the fireplace, gesturing with his whiskey glass as he told what was undoubtedly another story about his glory days as a corporate attorney. "Olivia!" My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes did their usual quick assessment, my hair, my outfit, my general presentation, before she kissed my cheek. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming. Your cousin Jessica brought her fiancé, the neurosurgeon I told you about. You should talk to him. He knows people at Massachusetts General. Translation, maybe he can help you get a real job." "I'm not looking for a new position, Mom," I said quietly, handing her the bottle of wine I'd brought, a $500 vintage my assistant had recommended, though I'd removed the price tag. "Things are going really well at work." She patted my arm with the sympathetic smile reserved for disappointments. "Of course, dear. It's stable, at least." Dinner was the usual performance. My father at the head of the table, my mother at the foot, siblings and cousins arranged according to some unspoken hierarchy of achievement. I sat between my nephew and Aunt Linda, the family's designated also-rans. The interrogation began halfway through the main course. "So, Olivia," my father's voice carried down the table, silencing other conversations. "Still working for that tech startup?" "It's not exactly a startup anymore, Dad. Horizon Technologies is valued at over $300 billion now." My brother Mike snorted. "And you're still answering phones and scheduling meetings?" I felt my cheeks flush. My role is considerably more complex than— "Melissa just made partner," Aunt Carol interrupted, beaming at my cousin. "Youngest female partner in the firm's history." "And Jessica's fiancé just published in the New England Journal of Medicine," my mother added, as if we were in some sort of family achievement auction. My father leaned forward, fixing me with that look, part disappointment, part bewilderment. "I just don't understand it, Olivia. You graduated summa cum laude from Princeton. You could have gone to any law school in the country. Instead, you're, what, fetching coffee for some tech bros?" The table fell quiet, all eyes on me. I'd rehearsed responses to this on the flight from San Francisco, but they all evaporated under the heat of collective judgment. "I'm not fetching coffee," I said finally. "I'm an executive assistant to the CEO. It's a critical position that—" "A secretary with a fancy title," My other brother, James, interjected with a laugh. Come on, Liv. You're wasting your potential. Even your high school boyfriend. What was his name? He's a VP at Goldman Sachs now. Daniel, my mother supplied helpfully. Such a nice boy. Always said you were too smart for your own good. I gripped my knife tighter, focusing on the geometric pattern I'd created with my food. I'm very good at what I do. I'm sure you are, honey. But answering phones, managing someone else's calendar, you could be running the company instead of serving whoever does. The table erupted in laughter, as if he'd made the most hilarious joke. I felt something crack inside me, that carefully maintained wall between my family life and my reality. Actually, I started, but was cut off by the distinctive ringtone of my phone. The table collectively turned to glare at me for the interruption of our family time. I pulled my phone from my purse, intending to silence it, when I saw the caller ID, Alexandra Chen, CEO. I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's my boss. On Christmas? My mother exclaimed, scandalized. What kind of person calls their secretary on Christmas? I stepped away from the table but remained in the dining room as I answered. Alex, is everything okay? Alexandra Chen's voice came through clearly, too clearly. I hadn't realized how quiet the room had become and how loud my phone's speaker was in the silence. Olivia, I'm so sorry to interrupt your family time, but the Neurocorp acquisition is imploding. The board is split on your valuation model, and the Japanese investors are threatening to pull out unless you personally walk them through your strategy. I turned my back to the table, lowering my voice. Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm in the middle of dinner. That's the thing. Tokyo market opens in 3 hours. If we don't have your sign-off on the revised terms, we stand to lose $4.2 billion. The board said, and I quote, "Get Olivia on this or the deal's dead. They won't proceed without your financial assessment." I could feel my family's eyes boring into my back. The silence at the table was absolute. Put them on standby, I said, slipping into work mode. Tell them I'll conference in from my laptop in 30 minutes, have Raj send me the updated projections, and get legal to redline the changes from the last draft I approved. Already done, Alex replied. And Olivia, I know this is an imposition, but there's no one else I trust with this. You're the only one who can save this deal. I understand. I'll call in soon. I ended the call and turned back to the table. Every face was frozen in various stages of shock and confusion. My father found his voice first. What was that about? I took a deep breath, suddenly aware of the power shift in the room. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel small in my family's presence. That, I said calmly, was Alexandra Chen, the CEO of Horizon Technologies, calling about an acquisition I structured, a $4.2 billion acquisition that apparently can't proceed without my approval. But you're just an executive assistant, yes, the executive assistant who designed the financial strategy for the third largest tech acquisition of the year, the one whose economic models have guided the company's expansion across 3 continents, the one who, as it happens, owns enough stock options to never have to work again if I didn't love my job. The silence was deafening. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My father's face had gone an interesting shade of purple. I need to borrow Dad's office for half an hour, I said, picking up my purse. I have a few $1 billion to save. Please start dessert without me. As I walked out of the dining room, head high, I heard my Aunt Linda whisper, "Did she say billion?" For the first time in my life, I left my family speechless, and it felt absolutely glorious. I spent 45 minutes in my father's study, not the 30 I'd promised. The familiar leather chair creaked as I leaned back after finalizing the deal, my laptop balanced on the antique desk where my father had always done his important work. The irony wasn't lost on me.
When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Dessert plates sat half-eaten, conversations hushed instantly, and all eyes snapped to me like I was a celebrity who'd just walked in. "Everything okay with your work situation?" my father asked, his tone uncharacteristically tentative. "Yes," I replied simply, reclaiming my seat. "The acquisition is proceeding. We saved the deal." "So you actually make decisions about billions of dollars?" my brother James asked, his earlier mockery replaced with disbelief. I took a small bite of the apple pie that had been placed at my setting. "Among other things." "But why didn't you ever tell us?" My mother's voice carried a hint of accusation, as if my success was something I had deliberately hidden from them. "I've tried, Mom, for years. No one ever wanted to hear it." Cousin Melissa, the celebrated lawyer, leaned forward. "So what exactly do you do for Alexandra Chen? She's like one of the most powerful women in tech." "I'm her right hand," I said simply. "I structure deals, review acquisitions, develop financial strategies, and yes, I also manage her schedule and correspondence. The title doesn't matter to me because I know my value." "And how much does something like that pay?" Mike asked, earning an elbow from his wife. I smiled. "Enough that I paid cash for my condo in San Francisco last year." The collective gasp was worth every moment of previous humiliation. My phone buzzed with a text. It was Alex. "The board approved. Tokyo's on board. You're a miracle worker, Olivia. Take the rest of the week off and expect a substantial bonus for saving Christmas." I showed the text to no one, but my smile must have given something away. "Another billion-dollar crisis?" my father asked, attempting humor but achieving awkwardness. "No," I replied, tucking my phone away. "Just confirmation that I'm very good at my little secretary job." As conversation awkwardly resumed around me, I noticed something had fundamentally shifted. The family that had dismissed me for years was now stealing glances, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. I was suddenly the most interesting person at the table, not because I'd changed, but because their perception had. And this was just the beginning. The remainder of Christmas evening unfolded like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. Relatives who had previously brushed past me to speak with my more successful cousins now orbited around me, peppering me with questions about Silicon Valley, tech investments, and, most transparently, whether I could help their children get internships. "Olivia, you simply must tell us more about your work," Aunt Carol cooed, the same woman who had cut me off mid-sentence for years. "It sounds absolutely fascinating." I sipped my wine slowly, savoring its notes and the moment. My father cleared his throat, cornering me by the fireplace after dessert. His expression was a complex mixture of embarrassment and something I rarely saw directed at me. Respect. "I may have underestimated the scope of your position," he admitted, studying his whiskey rather than meeting my eyes. "Most people do," I replied evenly. "That's often been to my advantage." "Your advantage?" I nodded. "People reveal more, expect less, and are completely unprepared when I actually demonstrate my capabilities. In business, being underestimated can be a superpower." The next morning, as family members prepared to depart, the transformation was complete. My mother hovered anxiously as I packed my overnight bag. "You'll come back for longer next time, won't you? Perhaps you could explain more about your investments to your father. He's been talking about diversifying his portfolio." I smiled thinly. "I'll see what I can do." As I waited for my Uber to the airport, my phone rang again. It was Alex. "The board wants to meet when you're back. After last night's save, they're finally ready to discuss that promotion we've been pushing for." "The Chief Strategy Officer position?" I asked, heart racing. "That's exactly it. They've seen what I've been telling them for years. You're the brains behind our biggest wins." She paused. "How's the family visit going?" I watched through the window as my relatives cast glances at me from the porch, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and newfound admiration. Let's just say perspectives have changed dramatically, I replied. I'm no longer just the disappointing daughter who answers phones. Good, Alex said firmly. It's about time they recognized what I saw in you 5 years ago. As my Uber pulled up, my father approached, hand extended awkwardly. Olivia, we're very proud of what you've accomplished, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I accepted his hand briefly. Thank you. Though nothing about me has changed since yesterday, only your awareness of it. As I settled into the car, I glanced back at the family tableau on the porch. For years, I had craved their validation, their recognition. Now that I had it, I realized something profound. I no longer needed it. My phone buzzed with another message from Alex. By the way, the board is considering a compensation package of 1.8 M plus stock options for the CSO role. Thought you might want to know before your family tries to give you more career advice. I smiled as the car pulled away. The ultimate vindication wasn't making them see my worth, it was realizing I had always known it, even when they hadn't. 6 months after that transformative Christmas dinner, I found myself back in Boston. This time, I wasn't arriving as just Olivia the disappointing daughter, but as Olivia Reynolds, newly appointed Chief Strategy Officer of Horizon Technologies. The announcement had made the Wall Street Journal, complete with a profile highlighting my meteoric rise and financial genius, conveniently overlooking the years of work that had preceded this overnight success. The article mentioned my Princeton background, but focused primarily on the 3 major acquisitions I'd architected, including the Christmas save that had finally made the board take notice. I hadn't planned to visit my family during this trip. I was in Boston for a financial conference where I was delivering a keynote address, but when news of my speech circulated through the family grapevine, the invitations had been immediate and insistent. My parents' house looked exactly the same, though I viewed it through different eyes now. As I pulled up in my hired car, I noticed my father waiting at the door, a courtesy he'd never extended before. There she is, he announced proudly as I approached, the financial wizard of Silicon Valley. Inside, I found not just my immediate family, but an assortment of aunts, uncles, and cousins who had just happened to be in the area. The dining room table was set with the good china, the set reserved for truly important guests. We thought we'd have a little celebration dinner, my mother explained, kissing my cheek. Everyone's been following your success. Dinner was surreal. My father repeatedly mentioned my daughter, the executive, to anyone who would listen. Cousin Melissa asked detailed questions about my compensation package, while Uncle Robert inquired about stock tips. My brothers, once so dismissive, now introduced topics only to defer to my expert opinion. As dessert was served, my father raised his glass. To Olivia, who has made this family so proud, we always knew you were destined for greatness. The table erupted in agreement, glasses raised. I took a small sip of champagne, letting the moment settle before I spoke. Thank you, I said finally. But I feel I should clarify something. The table fell silent. I'm exactly the same person I was last Christmas, when you all laughed at my little secretary job. The only thing that's changed is the title on my business card, and your awareness of it. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The most valuable lesson I've learned in business isn't about acquisitions or valuations. It's that true worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it. I knew my value long before any of you did. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Olivia, we always... It's okay, I interrupted gently. I'm not looking for apologies or explanations.
I just want authenticity. I'd rather be appreciated for who I am than celebrated for a position or a salary. My father cleared his throat. We may have been short-sighted, but we're trying to make it right. I nodded, softening slightly. I know, and I appreciate that. But moving forward, I hope we can build a relationship based on mutual respect, not accomplishments. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, my youngest niece approached me shyly. Aunt Olivia, Mom says you're really important now. I knelt to her level. What do you want to be when you grow up, Emma? She thought for a moment. I like drawing, but Grandpa says artists don't make money. I smiled, taking her small hand in mine. Here's something I wish someone had told me at your age. Do what makes you feel valuable, not what others value. The people who matter will see your worth, title or no title. As I left that night, my father walked me to my car. You know, he said quietly, I think I've been learning more from you than you ever did from me. I smiled, genuinely this time. That's how it should be. We never stop growing, Dad. Driving away, I realized my vindication hadn't come from proving my family wrong. It had come from finally understanding that I had never needed their validation in the first place. My worth had always been there, seen or unseen, recognized or not recognized.